Well, hello, everyone. And in the interest of time, just to make sure that we keep everyone on track, we will get started with this presentation. This is part of the Nourish membership package where we talk everything that has to do with running a successful practice, business, and otherwise presenting yourself to the world. And one of the biggest pieces of presenting yourself to the world is creating awesome courses and programs. And today we're going to focus on what makes a great program or a course. So we're going to talk about how you're going to get a standing ovation. So for everyone watching in the Facebook group, or if you're live, stay tuned. We're going to have a Q&A. Although if there is a burning question that you would love to ask, feel free to jump in and I will be monitoring the chat on the side right here. Without further ado, let's get into this. So who is this for? Are you in the right spot? Should you be listening to this? Well, if you're new to course creation, this is for you. We're going to go over some of the smaller details that gurus tend to overlook because they seem to be matter of fact to them. We're not going to spare those little details. We're actually going to talk about them. Now, if you have a lot of passion and knowledge to share, this is for you as well. If you want hints on how to package your genius into bite-sized chunks that I'm saying a 10-year-old can understand, well, you're probably aiming a bit higher in age group. But the idea is, how do you communicate ideas in such a way that people are enthralled and following and hanging on your every word? And finally, this is also for people who are looking to make money from their courses. This is not just for those who do this as a hobby or because they see it as fun. No, this is for those who are trying to create, let's say you're running a practice and you want to set something on autopilot. Well, you need a course for that. Or you want to create a program for your clients and it has to be communicated with slides and video. You're going to be making money off that. This is for you as well. Are you identifying yourself with one of these three? If you are, you're in the right place. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about components of a successful course, what is value and why value to a course is the same as location to a house. Recall, what's the most important thing about buying a house? Location, location, location. We're going to talk about anatomy of a course. So what does a good course consist of and how you put it together? How people learn, and I'll tell you why that is so important to a new course creator. Preparing your material, and choosing your platform to shop from. What are the differences, pros and cons, which one you go with? And then, and this is going to be the part that I usually enjoy the most, is tips and tricks. And we're going to cover quite a number of things that I've learned over doing these courses and things I want you to avoid. Okay, so first, the shocking truth. People do not want to buy your course or program. They don't want to buy your course. They don't want to buy my course. They're just not interested in that. So why are we here? Well, this is still true because we as human beings, we don't buy courses. We do not buy programs. What we are looking to buy is we're looking to buy solutions to our problems, something that will help us learn something new because it's going to generate income or overcome a particular issue that's been nagging on us for years. So we don't buy courses. And this is the most important thing. If this is one takeaway, don't sell a course, sell a solution, sell a transformation, sell something that's going to make a person brilliant and better. That's what you should be buying. So with that in mind, what are the essential components? Well, if we're selling transformation, if we're selling all of that, one of the most essential components is value. So before you start creating a course, before you sit down and you're going to think that you're going to knock this out of the park, ask yourself this: will my audience be a better version of themselves after you're done? And if you have a resounding yes answer to this question, fantastic, you're on the right path. If you have a I think so answer to this question, pause, maybe there's still work to be done. And if you're unsure, then you definitely do not want to proceed because you will be wasting your time. And then when you go to put your material together, focus on that desired transformation. It's a beaten up term, but it means that a person is going to feel or know something that they didn't realize they were capable of at the end. That's what transformation is all about. And you have to remember that when you're communicating value, emotions are much stronger than the how-tos. And we're going to get to that at the very end of this presentation. And we're going to talk more about this. So keep this in mind. Value is the essential component of a good program and a good course. Now I have the formula for success, and each one of these points is required. You lack one of these and you are doomed to fail. Sounds dramatic? It is, because I don't want you to suffer through the pain of creating something and then realizing that, man, Vadim was right. I'm lacking this component, and that's why it's not selling or people are not interested. So let's break this down. First, there's you. You have to have passion, you have to have knowledge, you have to have expertise, because this is essentially the essence of the course. This is what you're selling. But that's not enough. Assuming you have that in spades, there also has to be a struggle. In other words, your clients need to be wanting to solve, overcome, empower, better, master, whatever you want to use, but they want that so badly that they wake up thinking about this. Let's say somebody wants to write a book but doesn't know how. They're thinking about that all the time. Let's say somebody wants to find a soulmate. They're thinking about that all the time. That is that struggle. Next, you have to be able to deliver that transformation. We talked about this a couple of times already in the first few slides. If there is this struggle, you will have to be changing that person's mindset, perspective, skill level, and that is a component that people will respond to and then give you very good props for. Then comes marketing. If you have the first three components down pat, you have a brilliant course. It's nothing short of spectacular. But if you can't market it effectively, it's just going to sit on your laptop, on your YouTube channel, on your learning platform, and no one will know that it exists. So marketing is a critical component to making sure that this course works, that this course actually delivers what it's supposed to and attracts. Susan, welcome. And finally, the fifth component of a successful course is audience. Because there's one thing to try to attract a group of people who are massive in numbers versus a very small group of people. And those of you watching in the Facebook group, and if you've been with me on this journey about niches, this is when we talked about how big is the slice of pie that you're trying to target. Let's say you have 200 people who love you, who want to listen to what you have to say. But once you deliver that message, if it's only 200 people, there's nobody else to talk to. So you want to make sure that your audience is broad enough that you can go out and present the material that you're sharing with many times. So that's the formula of success. Again, I reiterate that you have to be passionate, you have to be addressing a real struggle, delivering something that's transformative for the people, effectively marketing, and having a broad enough audience to talk to. Those are the 5 success pillars of a successful course. And this is very important to remember. Lectures do not equal value. And I know this firsthand because my beta test, and Susan, I'm just going to refer to you because you were part of it. In my beta test, I had a first portion of my course dedicated to how an entrepreneur should feel. It was all about niches. The feedback I got is, Vadim, that's great, but you're lecturing. You're saying general stuff, and it's not necessary. It's not that it's bad, but it's not what I'm here for. So when you're thinking about a course or a program for your clients, make sure that you address that passion for transformation, passion for solving their struggle, and spare them the lecture. I'll give you an example. Say you're running a fitness studio, and somebody comes to you and says, how do I do proper squats? Now, you might have a degree in kinesiology and you might know this from very different angles, but you will not start talking to the person about how the muscles are attached to joints, what ligaments are for, how is this impacting bones and blood. You're not going to talk about anatomy. You're not going to talk about kinesiology. You will actually start training the person of how to do awesome, proper squats. And they will be thankful. And this is why I'm saying lectures do not equal value. We okay so far? Excellent. Like I said, if you're listening in a Facebook group and you wanna ask a question, feel free to jump in, or I'll be monitoring the group as well. So please answer the questions in the chat. Let's talk about how we learn. And I'll tell you why it's important in just a few slides that we go through. There are people who are visual learners. They prefer images, charts, diagrams, color, and mind maps. There are people who are oral learners. They listen intently, sometimes with their eyes closed. They use tools like rhymes and acronyms to remember things, and they respond very well to changing pitch, pace, and then inflection. This term I hate because I can never pronounce it correctly, but this is kinesthetic. I think it's kinesthetic. These people, they like role playing, using things as flashcards, carrying out an activity, anything that can aid in absorbing their material better. Then there are two types of people. These exist on complete opposites. They are the social learners and they're the solitary learners. And one prefers learning in a group activity when they can communicate and run material through others, and others, quite on the opposite side, they do not want to be distracted. They want to go at their own pace and do their own thing. They're also logical learners. These people respond really well to structures and very good with numbers, sometimes statistics. If you tell them this follows that because of X, they will respond to that. So these are 5 different types of learners, and no human being is just one type. We usually have a blend of them. But why am I telling you this? What is the significance? Now that you know these 5, when you're structuring your course or a program, one of the big components is engaging people. And you now understand the options for your content, so you can create tools like handouts, worksheets, supporting material, quizzes, templates, tests, whatever you want, because each one of those supporting materials is going to be addressing a particular learning experience and how people absorb information. You forego that and you just rely on slides and your voice, you're probably going to cater to the majority, to the visual and the oral types of learners. But to retain material and importantly to engage, think about all of the other things that people can do. So quizzes, fantastic for kinesthetic or logical people. Templates and tests, this is definitely in the logical. You have something that requires people to participate in your group, or let's say you're running a coaching program which has 5 or X number of participants. Getting them together will definitely appeal to the social learners. But don't be surprised if some people do not engage. It does not mean that they don't like it. It just might mean that they're solitary in how they absorb information. So remember how people learn, and this will help you create a better course. Now that you know how people learn, now that you know that it's all about value, and you remember the 5 components that make you successful in your program or a course, how do you prepare one? And this is the point where usually I found when I was learning this, gurus tend to glance over this because, oh, come on, preparing a course, it's mundane. It's more about ads that you attract people to, or how do you use creative material. But we're going to take it step by step. 1, have your goals and learning objectives written down. You may be using a regular pen and paper, or you might be using a software like Trello, but you have to define this for yourself and test this with your friends. What you're looking for is, can they grasp what the course is about, and does it sound interesting to them when you rhyme off a name of your course and maybe a short description. And if you're getting a thumbs up or you're getting nods, you're onto something. And I know this for a fact because I've I like to be fancy and create marketing terms for my courses, but really, I was too fancy once, and I created a course about it was learning how to create websites, but I gave it such a ridiculous name that no one even thought that this was about websites. And that's a bad thing. You don't want to confuse people even before they started engaging with your course. Then, knowledge. What will you be sharing? Again, trying to stay away from the lecturing, but at the same time delivering the transformation. Is it applicable and practical, and do people care? So this is talking about, do you have a big enough audience? In other words, do people care? And is this applicable and practical? Can they use this tomorrow? Can they apply to their business, to their life, to their relationships tomorrow? And if you're saying yes, and if people are giving you feedback that yes, they can, it is going to be amazing. There's actually a very simple reason for that, because think about it. You share information with somebody that it really speaks to their challenge. They turn around and apply that information and they get a result. Guess what? You will not have to ask for testimonials or feedback. People are just going to say, this is the best. Then passion and experience. Of course, we talked about that. If you don't have passion for the subject, you will not sound interesting. Even if you try, even if you act it out, you're still not going to come across as excited. And if you don't have enough experience, it's going to reflect in your material. Now, experience is an interesting thing. Because again, those who've been with me on the niches course know this. You don't have to be an expert to run a successful course or have a successful program. Why and how can that work? Easy. Position your course as a learning process. You state to your audience that you are just like them. You're going through this experience and you're discovering this for yourself, and you're here to share what you are discovering and what this means to you. It is amazing how much people enjoy that. And you know why? Because think about, imagine this scenario. It's a big corporate conference, hundreds of people in the room, and there's the person at the front of the room giving a presentation that he ends or she ends the presentation and asks if there are any questions. There will hardly be anyone who raises their hands and asks a question, because we don't want to sound silly, or maybe everyone else got it, but we didn't. So there are rarely any questions to be asked. But if you structure the course as a learning experience, you are essentially telling people, look, I'll be that person who raises the hand and asks, oh, sorry, I didn't get that. Or I am okay being wrong or considered to be silly or didn't understand, not understanding the material. And people gravitate to that because you're creating a sense of security to ask questions that others might have but are fearful of asking. So that's what I have to say about experience. Keep that in mind. Next, you need to make sure you have clear takeaways. Make certain that your audience walks away with a crisp message. You have failed if people say, I don't know what that was all about. I'm going to be asking all of you at the end of this, did you understand what this was all about? Like, how does this apply for your programs, for your future courses? And I hope you say yes. I know exactly how this applies. High quality sales page. Well, this is an interesting one. Everything else is about material and delivery and how to structure it. Why am I talking about a sales page? Well, a sales page, especially in the environment of online courses, is your calling card. And this is the first time that people are going to interact with you without actually speaking to you. So please make sure it's exciting, compelling, and reflects your personality. But high quality does not mean fancy. In fact, I've been introduced to a gentleman who does millions in sales year after year. I think he teaches about financial planning and being astute with your finances. His sales page is black and white. In fact, it's all grayscale. He hardly uses any images, and it's all text. So it doesn't mean fancy, but high quality means it speaks to those people who are interested in the subject, and it speaks in such a way that it communicates an opportunity to solve the struggle that people have. And finally, always do a soft launch. Even if it's family and friends, beg, borrow, steal, get somebody to take your course and test, 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 test. I can continue saying that word until the hour is up. Dry runs help you work out all of the kinks. Test as many times as possible and ask others. My favorite problems, mistakes, and if you find any of this presentation, do tell me. I make typos all the time, and I forget coupon codes. So if you're doing a program that you're selling with a coupon, make sure that the coupon code works and make sure your links work. In other words, when you're ready to go live, test, 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 test. Okay, so let's say all of those 6 points are covered and you're good to go. How do you map out a course? And you can do it 2 ways. You can start from the top and go down, or you can start from bottom up. If you know the transformation that you want to deliver, what are the steps that you need to take to achieve it? Try to keep it to 3 steps, maybe even 2 steps. It actually is easier for us as human beings to understand that I can actually do it and go through this material if there are fewer steps. Let's say you create 10 steps, and then some people will say, ooh, that's too much work. I don't want to invest my time. Those steps are going to be modules. And then you break down the modules into chapters or whatever you want to call it, or you can forego chapters altogether and go to the lessons. Alternatively, some people think like I usually take notes in my notebook, and they're sometimes disorganized, but I always make those notes, and then I organize those notes into chapters and then group those chapters into modules. So you can take one approach or the other, whichever suits your particular style or how you prefer to work. And that way, you'll organize a nice course which has a flow, it has a beginning, and it has an end, and it all focused on that transformation that you promised your audience. And they'll love you for it because they will see how you're guiding them to that. It will also, by the way, help you weed out some of the things that seem good to have, but are not necessary to have. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll make sure I'll cover them when we get to the Q&A, or if you do not understand what I'm talking about on a particular slide, just stop me. Oh, wonderful. We have a course, we have our structure, we have our idea, everything's in place. Now, the question is how? Which platform do you choose? There are 3 big buckets of platforms that you can choose. You can have course marketplaces. These are one of the most famous ones is Udemy. Then there's Skillshare, course marketplaces like that. Then there are learning platforms. These are dedicated software packages that are designed for course or program creators. Thinkific, Teachable come to mind. Those are the 2 most popular ones. Kajabi as well. And then you obviously have your own web property, a WordPress website or anything else that you create. Obviously, as anything in life, they all have pros and cons. So let's look at the pros and cons. For course marketplaces, the pros are they take care of all of the marketing. They do their own marketing and attract audience to the website. They have low or sometimes no monthly fees whatsoever, and they have very good visibility on the web. It's very easy to find them in search results, YouTube, anywhere. The drawbacks are, though, you do not actually own the customer relationship. So you can't effectively build your email list because people sign up to the platform, to the marketplace, not to your course. And that is a very important thing to do if you want to grow and engage your audience beyond just the one course that you or program that you create. There are certain rules and ownership of material which you have to abide by or you cannot be on the platform. And the one thing that it basically pricing, the way the pricing works on platforms was the one thing that I knew that this will never work for me, because marketplaces have the ability to set their own prices. They have the ability to discount your product if they see it's going to increase engagement with their audience. And that can devalue your knowledge without even you knowing it. So that's course marketplaces. You don't want to do the marketing, they're an excellent choice. You want to have ownership of your client, they're not. Learning platforms. Now, learning platforms are fantastic, especially with the new features that they're bringing in. They're purpose-built. They have all of the tools that you need to teach. Drip content, certificates, prerequisites, you name it. You can create a full curriculum on them. And they have the student relationship that you can cultivate. And those are relationships with you. Drawbacks, monthly cost. Thinkific is an approachable platform. Teachable has very expensive plans, in my opinion. And when you're paying that cost, you're basically saying, yes, I will be using all of those features, because if you're not, well, you're still paying for them. Content is locked in. In other words, if you decide to move, you want to make sure that you have a backup. And if you stop paying, you also might lose access to the content that you uploaded. And you need integrations because learning platform is great, but then you also need a way of communicating with students. This is actually why Kajabi appeared, because Kajabi came onto the marketplace saying, we want to be everything. We want to be your website. We want to be your learning platform. We want to be your email provider, all of those stuff, which is great. Greg is a colleague of mine, and he's on Kajabi. There are some limitations, but in general, it's great. It's just the cost that you do have to bear every month. And what I have done for myself, and I'm not advocating for this, but this is just was my choice, is I built my course program on my own WordPress website. It gives you ultimate flexibility, lowest cost, and it's multifunction because you can upgrade it and add plugins to it until the cows come home, basically. The drawbacks, support and maintenance are all on you. Something breaks, I don't have anyone to call, but just try to figure this out for myself. And some people are okay with that, and some people, this is going to be a point where they're going to say, no, absolutely not. I can't live with that. Lack of credibility. What I mean by that is, your website might be brand new and no one knows about this. And then when people land on it, they don't necessarily know who you are and what you stand for, unlike the big platforms. And time and effort required. There is some tinkering. I like to tinker, so that's why I chose this. But for some of you, you might say, no, that's too much work. I'm actually willing to pay the cost of a learning platform and just have peace of mind. So those are the three options of how you deliver your course or a program. You choose for yourself. Now comes I love this section the most because this is one of those situations where I'm going to share with you things that made me go, don't, so many times that it's not even funny. These are the tips and tricks that most gurus overlook, and yet they are the ones that can make your course creation so much more pleasurable and enjoyable, and then you won't have to. Anyway, I'm doing too much of a preview. Let's just jump into this. So number one, offer the dream. I used to work in my corporate life in an agency that serviced one of the car manufacturers, and there was a saying that people don't buy a car for horsepower. People buy cars so neighbors can gossip about how well off they are. In other words, what I'm trying to say is people are not buying the material of the course. They're not really buying the content or the way you put together the slides or the presentation or anything of that nature. They are buying the emotions or the state of how they will feel after they're done. Let's say you're teaching people how to use Photoshop. Well, they're buying the sense of expertise at the end. Let's say you're trying to help people lose weight, beaten up subject, but nevertheless perennial. Well, they're buying that state of where people are going to be amazed how they look. They're not buying the process of losing weight. So make sure that when you're building a course and when you're thinking of a name, offer the dream. we love, as human beings, we love the opportunity that something presents. And partners with that is emotion sells. And this is very important because when you're going to be crafting your lessons, you're going to be obviously presenting the material in one form or another. And there are 5 very most powerful emotions that you can appeal to in that content. You can have that element of surprise when you're saying that's counterintuitive and people didn't expect. It's very, very powerful emotion to use in your very first lesson of any program, any course, is when you debunk myths. And I've done that in my first course as well, is when you tell people things that they believe, but is not actually true. It's just something that we think is true, but it's not. So that element of surprise engages people and draws them in and makes them want to listen to what you have to say. Relieving frustration. This is obviously a very easy to understand one. And remember how we talked about how people learn? There's one thing that relieving frustration might, it's not even about content. The best way to present yourself is to have a presentation similar to what you're seeing right now, and maybe yourself in the corner. Again, we're on Zoom, so this is by default how it's set up, but you're relieving the frustration of people processing information. When you have both visual, yourself in the corner, and the slides, oral, you are speaking and people are able to understand it, and also the colors and the design of your slides, it involves so many ways that people comprehend information that it relieves the frustration of actually going through the course. You can see it has nothing to do with material. Then there's anticipation, then there's sympathy, making sure that you align yourself with your audience. And the last one is fear, and fear is very powerful. I do not like fear, and that's why I'm saying on the slide, use it with caution. Fear has a very strong response. It generates a very strong response in people, but misused, you can create more frustration and anxiety rather than the transformation. So I have to list it because it is a strong emotion, but I don't recommend you use it in your courses or programs. How many lessons should you have? How many lessons make up a good course or a program? You will hate this answer because the answer is, it depends. People, 2 things. People are very busy, and courses vary in their content or the subject matter, but as a rule of thumb, you do not want to have, and this was my mistake, I fess up to it, when I first created my courses, you should not have more than 3-4 lessons is already stretching it, and definitely less if you're asking people to do any assignments. Because it's great when you're in school and you're 100% dedicated to learning something new, but most of us take professional courses or self-improvement courses in our spare time. And then there are families, there are friends, there are other household chores, for heaven's sake. You need to go to the store. So it's not like people are able to dedicate hours upon hours just listening to the most magical, which I'm sure your course is going to be, magical information there is. There's just not enough time. So structure your course with 1, maybe 2 modules. Again, the less amount of steps to that transformation, the better. 1 or 2 chapters, maybe 3 chapters, and no more than 2 to 5 lessons per chapter. And that, like 5 chapters, if you go with 3 modules, 3 chapters, and 5 lessons, then you have to make sure that you give people plenty of time to complete your course. So you don't say that, oh, it's a 1-week course and you have to dedicate hours a day to it. No, just extend it to a couple of months. Give people space because things happen. Takeaway here, less is more. How long should a lesson be? Oh, this is an interesting one. And again, this is my personal experience. Ideally, 10 to 20 minutes. I've been hearing people say that, well, you should strive for about 45 minutes of content and 15 minutes Q&A. No. And there are two very important things to remember. One, If you ever played a game on your phone, all of those games like Candy Crush and whatnot, they're based on success, on instant gratification. You complete a level and you feel great. In much the same way, we seek gratification when we do a program. So if you're able to complete a lesson in 10 to 20 minutes, your brain sends out a positive signal. Good job, you did it, I'm proud of you. But if your lesson is, let's say, 45 to 50 minutes, and you have to pause in the middle of it because something came up, or your kids distracted you, or your spouse came home, anything of that nature, then you get a different signal. You're saying, oh man, now I have to remember that I have to complete this lesson. Gotta make sure I don't forget, write it down. It creates more anxiety than pleasure. So keep that in mind. And I know this for a fact because I used to be a big fan of creating hour-long lessons, and I felt if I didn't deliver 60 minutes, then I was shortchanging my audience. Not the case. In fact, if you're on a roll and you're creating a 60-minute lesson, cut it up. You can have go to your favorite video editing software and just add it up, cut it up, and you have 3 or 4 lessons out of that 1 hour, which, believe me, is going to be beneficial to your audience. And interestingly enough, this video is going to be part of the Nourish membership, as I said in the very beginning. And this is going to be about an hour long, and this is also going to be cut up so it's easier to digest, and you don't have to feel that you have to come back to something that you didn't finish watching. Moving on. This is a fun one. This one I learned the hard way. Avoid putting lesson numbers on slides. I am one of those people who likes to, like I said, I like to tinker. So I created a beautiful intros to all of my lessons, and I put lesson 1 on intro for lesson 1 and lesson 2 on intro for lesson number 2. And there was background music and it was beautiful up until the time when I realized I had to rearrange things. Up until the time that I realized that these particular 3 lessons I can take out of this course and use in a different course. And they were no longer 1, 2, and 3. They were actually 7, 8, and 9. So spare yourself the aggravation because you will be successful. No doubt you will be. And you don't want to waste or spend time reformatting or re-editing anything on the slides if you don't have to. Because your course material will grow, it'll adjust and be combined into bigger programs. So save yourself the time. If you want to include lessons, include them in lesson descriptions. Somewhere on your platform, it will always allow you to create a name for your lesson. Feel free to use it there. And much the same thing, don't mention other lessons when recording. If you're doing a voice recording, if you're narrating your slides, try to avoid mentioning other lessons. And it's for the same reasons, because you might take that lesson and put it in a different course or a program. When we were going through the program with nutritionists, a lot of nutritionists have to deal with their clients, especially when they are dealing them for the first time. They're explaining similar concepts over and over again. And those concepts are universal. They can be applied anywhere. So imagine if you're saying something to the effect of, oh, this is fantastic, and in the next lesson, we're going to cover that. Well, what if you have to take that lesson and move it to a different program? And in the next lesson, you are not covering that, you're covering this. So think about it when you're recording. And if you do feel it's necessary to say something that refers to the previous lesson or to the content that's about to follow, do it at the very end. Create a pause before you say that, because that way it's going to be easier for you to cut it out when you're editing. Setting price. This is one of those endless conversations. Go online, just try looking at price for courses, and you'll find such a breadth of opinion. My position is anything you're doing personally and one-on-one should be very expensive. Anything that you are not providing any input or touching should be fairly cheap. But what's cheap? So first and foremost, don't anchor yourself to other creators. You are unique. Your knowledge, your experience are nothing compared to others. Sure, there are gurus, but Don't worry about that. Start low and go high, not the other way around. Because if you do, let's say you put out a $99 program out there, and then you see that it's not really working out and you want to pare back and you want to go back to 77, if any of your customers who bought it before, like in the beginning, see that, they're going to feel slighted. And it's not going to leave a good feeling, and it's not going to be a healthy relationship. So always go up, but not the other way around. And then think about conversion rates. So what's a conversion rate? How many people land on your sales page versus how many people versus buy, whatever that percentage is, those don't change very often. So here's a worksheet. This is price in action. At a price of $5 to make $5,000, you need to sell your course 1,000 times. An average conversion rate for a $5 course, 5%, maybe even higher. So you have to have 20,000 people visit your sales page in order to make that $5,000. 20,000 visits is a lot of people. And if that 5,000 is not a year, and this is something that you want to make in a month, you have to make sure that 20,000 people visit your sales page every single month. You have to have a pretty darn big niche. Look, it's not impossible. It's not easy is what I'm trying to say. Here's the magic though. If you start raising your price, your conversion rate does not drop. It does not drop like a rock. Take a look at this. And these are actual market statistics. This is not pulled out thin air. So at a price of $50 to make that same $5,000, it only takes 100 sales. But your conversion rate is roughly 2.3%, which means that's only 4,347 visits on your page. That is much more doable and manageable. And the math works the same as you begin to climb. In fact, up to the price point of about $200, that conversion rate is going to stay between 2.1, 2.3%. Of course, naturally, the question comes, well, shouldn't I be just pricing myself at $200? And then there's a different tension comes into play. You can try it, but do you have the testimonials? Do you have people saying that this is a brilliant course? Have you been in the market long enough? Have you tested? Are you feeling comfortable with this? And what kind of service are you providing with it? Is this completely hands-off or is blah, blah? There are many nuances that come into play. My ideal price for an entry-level course when you're trying to introduce yourself is either $27, $37, or $47. These can be Canadian, US, Australian, really doesn't matter. It's just I'm guessing you're going to be pricing your courses in the geography where you're at, so it's easy to deal with taxes. But those numbers, one, they're established in the marketplace and they don't create that big of a hurdle for people they don't have to think that much. Because if you think about it, $37 if you're charging for a course, it's not a lot. In fact, it's not something that people would, they're not going to regret that decision of buying it, even if they never take your course. And also with those price points, your percentage of refunds is going to be very low because people just, okay, I spent $37 on this course, that's fine. Even if I never took it, that's fine, that's okay. Of course, you're not creating a program or a course for it not to be consumed. Of course it's not. In fact, you do want people going through it and providing you feedback, but those are just observations and that's how it works. When you're naming your course, the next point is avoid how to. Avoid how to lose weight. Avoid how to learn Photoshop. Why? Because how to is the domain of YouTube videos. This is what YouTube is known for, is the how-tos. And even though you might be covering some of the same topics and some of the same agenda, describe your course or program based on the transformation it delivers. What people will feel like, achieve when they go through this, not the how-to. Of course, you're going to be telling them how to do this in the course. But remember what I said about people buying emotions and people buying, like, what is the value? They're not buying the how-to. They can go on YouTube and research it themselves. They're going to be buying you, your helpful hand, your empathy, everything that you're going to enrich your material with. And that's why they're going to love you and come back to you. This is how relationships are built. So when you're naming your course, do not start the name with how to. Okay? Fantastic. Now, what do we have left? Ooh, first, I love this image. It's scary, unsettling, and at the same time artsy. But be aware of the curse of knowledge. What is the curse of knowledge? The curse of knowledge goes something like this. When you learn something, it is very difficult for you to imagine what it felt like when you didn't know this, whatever you learned. And as experts, as people putting together programs for our clients or creating any courses of that nature, we already know so much that it's very difficult to think that nuances as to not putting numbers on slides actually matters. But it does. So describe everything in the most simplistic terms possible. You're going to be doing a service. This is not going to dumb down your material. Never assume that anyone already knows what you're talking about. Explain everything that you have to say. Do not use acronyms without explaining them. Worked in the corporate life, you join a new company, and I had notebooks where there was a page dedicated to acronyms, and people threw them around as if this was a badge of honor to know those acronyms. That's not what sells courses. That's not what makes courses and programs enjoyable. And at the end, keep it simple. The simpler you can make it, the better. This is partially why I said that you have to make material so a 10-year-old can understand it, is because if a 10-year-old can understand your material, you have a solid program. And finally, perfection is your enemy. If you have launched your program, your course, when it is picture perfect, no typos, videos are amazing, your glam shots are done, your background is blurred, and you're not sitting like me in an office and everyone knows that this is my apartment and not a studio, then you've launched it too late. And this is actually a statement from product development. If you launched your product and it's perfect, you launched it too late. Feedback is going to be your biggest mentor. And remember, there's a lot to be said for authenticity. Sure, if you're Tony Robbins or Gary Vaynerchuk, of course you're going to have multi-camera angles on you, perfect light, studio environment, and you're going to be makeup, hair, everything's done for you. But most of us are not Tony Robbins or Gary Vaynerchuk or Amy Porterfield. We're not. And there's no reason to try to aspire for that level of presentation, because at the end of the day, just like people are not buying your course, just like people are not buying your material, they're buying what they're going to feel like. And you can, if you can make that happen for them, and you can be that conduit that makes them feel like a brand new self. And that's way more valuable than perfect light. And that's way more valuable than perfect timing on your slide transition. It's just the way it is. And people also gravitate to authentic presentations. So even if you're recording something and the cat walks in the room, just go with it. If somebody distracts you, not to the point when you actually have to get up and leave your room, but if somebody distracts you for the first time, that's okay. Give yourself the latitude to not be perfect, and you're going to be fine. And I think, if I recall my slides correctly, we're just 10 minutes shy of an hour, and I think this is the end. And now I saved some time for Q&A, if you have any Q&A. I do see that there's a couple of people in the Facebook group, but I guess they want to remain anonymous. So Greg, Susan, should you have any questions, I'm more than happy to field them and share any additional knowledge that I have. If you don't, that's fine. You can just say no in the chat, and we're going to continue to the closing slide. Beautiful. Beautiful. It means I hit it out of the park. And like I said, So I promise no salesmanship here. Absolutely going to continue. Next time, no, next month, I am going to be covering a different subject and posting it in the membership area, which is going to be called Market Smart, which means market smart is how to create any content you want in no time at all. And I'm going to be talking about the concept of PLR, private label rights material, and AI, artificial intelligence tools. You see how I deciphered the acronyms there? There you go. Never use acronyms. To boost your productivity 100 times. There are amazing tools that are available for either free trial or very cheaply that you can take and combine together to build mind-blowing content that's going to make you sound, well, like not only an expert, but the person who actually created a segment or a niche or whatever. So that's going to be next time, and we're going to spend an hour, and that's going to be less of a me talking, but rather me showing how you take a piece of content and turn it into a blog post, into a course outline, or not a course, but maybe a lesson outline, and how to do that in very, very short time, how to create material for your sales page. So that's going to be next month. Stay tuned. I'm going to be sending out emails to anyone on my email list to welcome you to join. Fantastic. It's been great having you. I am glad that I didn't go over an hour. I was afraid that this might extend, but happy to contain it to just an hour. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. And if this helped you, leave your comments. And I promise not to say this, but I will say it. Join the membership. Bye. Thank you very much.